Welcome back to another episode of Bitfinex Talks. I'm your host, Ricardo Martinez. Today, I'm here with Mathias Buus, who is the CEO of Keet. Mathias, how are you today? Thanks for joining the show.
I'm good. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very excited to talk about peer-to-peer technology and Keet and Holepunch, our company. I could talk about that stuff for infinity. But I guess we only have like half an hour, so we'll make it efficient.
Awesome. For those who don't know, what is Keet?
So Keet is it's 100% private, end-to-end encrypted chat application. So you and I are talking through Keet right now, even though we're like, very, very far from each other physically in different parts of the world. All peer-to-peer, meaning directly with each other, not going through any data centers, through any servers, directly with each other. We have a chat here also where we can do like full text chat like you're used to from Slack, like very rich chat. But since it's peer-to-peer, there's like no limits, which means that if you used, you probably used like centralized alternatives like Zoom or Google Meet in the past. And there's this thing people always do where they're like, oh, let me try to upload a picture, and the apps will, either not allow that, or they'll be like, well, it has to be less than 5 megabytes because they're storing it all in their big data centers, and it's costing them money. Like with this kind of peer-to-peer technology, I could share a terabyte file with you right now, and it will still work, and we can stream our videos with each other in as high quality as we want because there's no arbitrary things in between us limiting us. It's just my internet connection and your internet connection. So that's basically our mantra. We build everything peer-to-peer and just try to think about the user rather than like big servers and how we can like mine all the data and stuff like that.
Awesome. Without getting too technical, how is it that you guys are accomplishing this?
So I come from a long peer-to-peer background. We have a big team of peer-to-peer experts, but basically we are just like, to put it simply, we're actually just utilizing all the things we already have. Like you and I are sitting on really powerful internet connections that we pay for, right? It's no magic. We pay for them ourselves. We have computers we bought with money that are really, really capable, more capable than ever before in history, right? So we have really, really powerful technology, but we're actually using very little of it. So with peer-to-peer and Holepunch, we're just making technology that allows you to take like full advantage of that. Obviously, there's a ton of technical detail about how that works, and it's like super complicated. But the cool thing is, it's not complicated for you and I as users and also developers because we solve the problem once, and then we give users and developers these simple tools to compose powerful apps on top. And that's one of the things I really love about Keet in general. Our first app is, it's not rocket science. It's like, it's one of those apps with like a couple of buttons here and there, and like, but it unlocks this huge feature set of like massively hard, complicated things like file sharing, like high quality video streaming, like group calls, like chat, which otherwise would actually cost you tons of money. I don't know if you're using Slack, but every time I open Slack, it asks me to upgrade to premium because they have to monetize it somehow. And that's the cool thing about working on these kind of things, because we don't have to, because it doesn't cost anything to run it. So Keet and Holepunch, the company that's building Keet, doesn't. We're not losing any money by people using Keet because there's no operational concern of that, because it's just people's computers and people's internets.
Cool. Just so the audience knows, we're using Keet right now to do this podcast. I've heard that Holepunch has been compared kind of to like BitTorrent. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, so super fair. So I started out my peer-to-peer career with BitTorrent, and BitTorrent to me is like, it's a beautiful example of peer-to-peer where it was made by started with one guy and then kind of grew from there, but it grew into this mega unstoppable thing that was used for all kinds of crazy things, especially as we all know, like piracy, sharing video content. And what's beautiful about that is that there was so much going on in the world when BitTorrent was big, is to stop BitTorrent because people were losing money on the film rights. But then since it was peer-to-peer, like there was no way to do it. So like that's kind of like, it's a perfect showcase for the power of peer-to-peer technology. Like you can have something that's so big yet so unstoppable that even like the biggest industries on earth, but all the the power behind those couldn't even stop it. So with Keet and Holepunch, we're taking a lot of the principles of the technology from back then. So like, one of the things that always I thought was a missed opportunity with things like BitTorrent was that they actually got stuck in this idea of like we're sharing files, we're sharing video. It's like this very simple case, but the technology behind it doesn't put any limitations to what you're sharing. So when we at Holepunch, we take these ideas and we say, what if we can apply them to anything, any data stream, any content, anything, like turn it into this more like modular component, right? And then just allow people to build easy apps on top of these ideas. So, when you and I talk here on a live video stream, that's also just a data stream going back and forth. It just happens to be end-to-end encrypted video. If we chat, it's also just, basically data streams being merged into a thing. So like taking these ideas from BitTorrent and then just obviously supercharging them and applying 20 years of innovation on top, that's always happening in the world. And that's what's so cool about it, because it's like it's proven ideas. We're just like reiterating them to fit everything.
That's awesome. I'm a pretty big proponent of free and open source software. I'm a big fan of Richard Stallman and open source code. I heard Keet is going to make the code available as open source. Any idea on when that's supposed to take place?
Yeah, so we're actually in the process of doing that right now. We're writing up documentation for our stack, and we're rolling that out during December and ongoing. So as soon as we have components documented, we'll release them. The cool thing about Keet and our whole stack in general is that it's an extremely modular stack, meaning that it's like hundreds of small components each doing one thing, and a lot of those are very usable from people when they make apps. So we're going to do all of those, and we're going to open source all of them, but like in a way where it's also like nicely documented, so you know where to start and how to attack them. I come from a huge open source background myself. I live and breathe open source. I think it's one of those things in the world where, if I think back at my career when I started doing BitTorrent, one of the reasons why you could do that was because there was so much information available, because it was open source, and you could dig in and you could learn without going to BitTorrent school. You can just sit at home and doing it. So that's a big part of everything we do. So we don't do anything that's not going to be eventually open source. We just want to make sure that when we release, that people have a way to understand and attack it in a good way.
So once the code is open source, like what kind of projects like do you expect the community to come up with? Like what other applications can this technology be used for?
So interesting, because it's like when you look at the foundations of peer-to-peer, they're so foundational that you can basically build anything on top. Obviously, there's things that you can really supercharge in peer-to-peer, like video chat and file sharing. I think we'll see tons more things around just moving lots of data, like really rich file sharing apps. I'm sure we'll see that. I'm sure we'll see very rich social media apps that have these kind of same ideas. We'll see things like just imagine all the things that you could actually run at home and create a marketplace for it. So like, we have payments in Keet right now using Bitcoin Lightning, which means that people can actually run, businesses on this. So, what kind of business can you run at home? You have internet connections. Maybe you want to run a VPN from home. You could do that. Maybe you want to run we're talking about Bitfinex. Maybe you want to run a little trading thing at home where you're selling trading data sets. Where that's making you a little money, but it's like you can just do it all from home. You don't have to give it away to a big provider or anything like that. So for us, it's all about unlocking the primitives for people to build anything. And it's almost like there's no app that's small enough or crazy enough, because since you're taking away this operational aspect of making apps where before peer-to-peer, when you make apps, you're always thinking like, well, I got to run a server, or I got to sign up for a thing, and it's going to cost me like $10 a month. So like there's things that just don't make sense because you don't want to keep them off. Since you're taking that away with peer-to-peer, you're going to see this explosion of just weird and cool things that can happen, because like there is no monetary barrier of entry basically. So that's what's really super exciting to me. So like a huge explosion I see. I think we'll see all kinds of apps, but especially things that are data heavy is where peer-to-peer really shines, because you can take the brakes off.
Okay, thanks. I'm glad you brought up Lightning because that was going to be my next question. With the newest release of Keet, Lightning has been implemented. Um, like, how can you use Lightning within Keet?
So in Keet, we have integration with Lightning wallets, so you can hook up your Lightning node and you can send tips or small transfers to each other in the chat, which is like both useful if you're talking to an expert or like if you wanted to compensate somebody you were talking to for some reason. What we're really excited about is actually the primitive itself, payments, because it's like Keet itself is actually running on this thing called the Holepunch platform. So that's the thing that gives you these P2P capabilities. And payments is just a capability the platform gives you, which means that any app can hook into that capability and accept payments or send payments for that matter using the APIs. So obviously when you're making peer-to-peer apps, you want to make commercial peer-to-peer apps, and you want to create a marketplace where people can commercialize and also get paid if they're doing things. Like I think one of the things that's actually really interesting about peer-to-peer is how we can make marketplaces that allows the content creators to make money also. Like that's something that's really, really hard online today, I think, like without having to enforce the same system on everybody. So like, not to go back, but like the Bitfinex data case, I think is really interesting, where if you're a little trader, you can just sit at home and you can make money of your data sets and you can charge whatever you want and you don't have to ask anybody about permission about what you're doing because it's all just between you and your customers. So that's also super important, I think, for like things like, this like nightmare jurisdictions you're in right now, where if you're using an online service, you don't even know what kind of like legal system you're using anymore because it's all filtered together. Peer-to-peer kind of solves that, brings things back to how they should be just between you and your clients, and not all these middlemen can kind of just disappear.
When I've spoken to Paolo about Keet, he says one of the primary motivations for releasing Keet is freedom of speech. Can you discuss how Keet helps protect freedom of speech?
Yeah, so basically, because we're doing peer-to-peer and because we're fully end-to-end between each other, we're not going through some intermediary that has to either like moderate or like provide the same kind of rules on everybody. Actually, so you're from, you live in Colombia, I live in Denmark. Both are like countries that on the big scene doesn't get mentioned a lot. And I get very frustrated often with just the cultural implications of that, because we have different ways of doing things in Denmark, and I'm sure you have different ways of doing things in Colombia. But when we talk on Facebook, we have to all talk in the same system, and it's like the most boring of everything, you know what I mean, or like the most censored of everything, because it has to be a bucket that fits everybody. That's not how humans work. We're all very, very different, and that's what's really cool about Keet, especially that you can have these like. We can have all the systems at once, basically all the cultures at once, without any moderation, because there is no need for it, because we can just talk to each other directly. And especially also like, the political implications of that. If you're living in a country that has a more oppressive system, then, you'll experience a lot of day-to-day censorship. I'm very lucky not to live in a country like that, but a lot of people in the world do. And then these end-to-end directly connected systems are really important, because it means you can actually say things without the feeling, without getting censored, and actually expressing your opinion. So that's a huge, huge part of our mission, just providing people the ability to express themselves and like provide freedom of speech, as you say.
Okay, cool. Back to the content creator thing. As a content creator, I'm super interested in using Keet for doing podcasts and things like that. Right now we're in an alpha version of the app, but do you guys plan on adding like more features to make it easier to use for content creation?
Yeah, 100%. So we want to add basically a thing we call broadcast mode, where a podcaster like yourself could actually just. Right now we're using Keet to record the podcast, but obviously the next step should be that people can just consume the podcast on Keet, and you can set up whatever rules you want for monetizing that. So you could, either it could just be tips based, that's up to you, or people pay for content or subscription, and that's like the next steps for that for Keet, and we're working on that right now. I'm actually super excited about that, because again, when I look at platforms for content creators, there are almost always focused on like the 1% that's extremely successful. And I think with peer-to-peer and things like Keet, we can start focusing on the rest of the 99%. So like, how can a podcaster or somebody who has like 10 followers but it's like growing still get the same kind of experience as the super mega star 1% in terms of like getting on a platform, making a couple of bucks, getting that endorphin kick that is from like making a little money, putting more effort into it maybe, or like making more content, and kind of like snowballing from there. That's all of a sudden doable in a peer-to-peer platform, because we can give the same experience to people who make very little revenue and people who make a lot, because we don't make any revenue from that. So like, we have no interest either way. And also it doesn't cost us anything, which is actually the big problem for these kind of things. If you think about how much a platform like YouTube loses on somebody who has very little views because they have to upload all the content. So that's why they have to squeeze everybody else. So that's a big part of our mission. And like I said, we're gonna do these broadcast modes where you can basically stream your podcast on Keet.
Are you familiar with podcasting 2.0, where there's like a protocol, or not really like a protocol, but like they've kind of added new features to podcasting apps to allow Lightning integration?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big movement in general for just actually compensating content creators, because content creators drive most successful online businesses. It's just that they're not really getting compensated for it. So it's good for business. It's not necessarily good for all content creators. I think I think that's, in general, it's a good trend. I don't see how you can do this on centralized things in general, but just because I know the cost metrics are just like, they're not there. Like the amount of money you have to generate for somebody who's not creating a high amount of thousands of views to drive ad revenue that they make the money back, is just not there. So that's really cool about peer-to-peer, is that you can just stop thinking about that, and you can just start thinking about content and how because like, you're basically footing the bill yourself, and your users are footing the bill by resharing the peer-to-peer network when you're watching a stream. So it's like, that's what's beautiful about peer-to-peer, is that it sounds really good, and it sounds almost too good to be true, but it's not. It's just that it's just transparent. We're just paying with our own hardware and our own data, which we're already paying for.
Awesome. What's next for Keet? Like, what other features, not in regards to content creation, but what other kind of features are you guys planning on adding?
So we're very close to releasing Keet Mobile. That's like probably the most asked for feature, which is awesome. There's nothing better than having that feeling when the most asked for features is just more Keet. So then we have this meme going on that's when mobile, because that's what everybody replies to our tweets. So that's coming out very soon. We're doing the internal testing of it right now, but it's obviously super exciting to get it on your phone and have the same kind of peer-to-peer experience on your phone in the first version of that. Then we're also getting close to releasing the first version of what we call big rooms, which is actually kind of a little bit similar to podcast, but like where you can run rooms with tens of thousands of users and have that be fast and scalable, and add in moderation features for rooms where you want to do that and stuff like that. So we can, that's super exciting for us, because then we can slowly start moving everything onto Keet and like no more of these like centralized services. Right now, I don't know if you know, but like it's almost like a joke, but we have a Discord where we talk to users also. Obviously, we want to move all that into Keet. So that's also going to be very exciting for us. So that's the big next things, combined with things I already mentioned, like streaming. And then we'll be releasing the platform that allows other people to make things, and that's obviously also a big part of our next steps, and very exciting.
Do you see Keet competing with apps like Telegram or Signal as once the mobile app comes out?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like all in this interesting space. Keet is it's always hard to quantify apps, because Keet is both like a chat app, but it's also Slack, and it's also a little bit Discord, and it's probably also eventually going to be a little bit of Twitter in a way. Like it has these like nice aspects of it. And it's actually kind of funny you mention it, because that's also how I see people use things like Telegram today. Like they also use it as a news channel. They also use it as stuff. So I actually think more and more things, not that Keet is necessarily competing with Signal and Telegram, but it's more like everything is more moving into this chat model, because it's just how humans like to consume things, and it's very real. There's nothing better than watching news when it's just from a channel from people that you follow and that you know, and like that you think are trustworthy. You can kind of pick your news or your stuff you want to look at yourself. So definitely, and that's also why we're very excited to put it on mobile, because that's where a lot of users are today, or like most users are for their on the go stuff, or when they're just walking around. So it's super exciting, and it's also been a really interesting experience for us, because there's very, very little peer-to-peer stuff going on phones, which is kind of unfortunate, because you have this very, very powerful device with you all the time. Like my phone I think is more powerful than my laptop these days. So just bringing being able to like one of my criticisms always of phones is that they're in this perpetual, you're at the consumer mode, where you can do very little with them other than consume things. So kind of trying to flip the scale a little bit there, but by adding an uncompromising peer-to-peer experience on the phone is very exciting for us. And I don't know any other apps that actually do that. So including Signal or Telegram. So super exciting, and can't wait to get that out.
That is super exciting. I hate doing things on my phone for that reason. I feel limited compared to my laptop. You mentioned that you guys don't get any revenue from the users using Keet. How is Holepunch and Keet being funded?
So right now we're funded by, we're doing a partnership with Bitfinex and Tether. The beautiful thing about peer-to-peer is that we don't really need much money either, because we have no operational expense. So if you look at things like Twitter and Facebook and Reading News, like all their money is going to driving big data centers, basically, other than employees. And a lot of those employees are just there to actually also drive that infrastructure. So the cool thing about running a peer-to-peer company is you can be really small but have a really big impact. So that's really, really important for us, because the first thing for us is like the user experience and actually building great apps. So when you're tying that to something where the more people you add on, the more money you lose, then you have to monetize the users immediately, basically, or like have a plan for it. That's also why we are doing this very aggressive VC route, where we're like, we only partner with people that share our peer-to-peer vision and uncompromising vision, basically. That's what we gain through Bitfinex and Tether, which is our partners on this. So it's super exciting. Everybody is very, very aligned on that mission, which makes me very excited also about the future.
Yeah, I'm super excited about Keet. Another question that I had about Keet is why Bitfinex is so interested in Keet. Do you have any input on that?
Well, I've known Paolo, the CTO, for probably more than 5 years by now. Time passes by, and I met a lot of people in my software career and P2P career, but I met a few people like Paolo that are so uncompromising also about the vision he has for open source and peer-to-peer, and actually putting his time and also money behind it. And that's what I seen time and time again with Bitfinex and Tether, and I think that's also why we're so aligned. Like there's always this idea of like we're trying to do something that matters, something big, rather than doing like a quick cash grab or something like that, or whatever you call that, like, and then exit. And that's the reason why I was excited to do this, and I'm sure that's the reason why Paul was excited to do this also, because he sees the same thing in the other direction. So it's not often you meet people where you're so aligned, and that's definitely what happened here. So that's super cool.
When Keet was presented at the Adopting Bitcoin conference in El Salvador, one of the things that Paulo discussed was kind of its alignment with Bitcoin. The Bitcoin ethos, really. Can you kind of discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, well, so I'm sure Paulo might have a different take on this, but like actually, when I look at Bitcoin, I actually see other than all the things it's done. But like, it's actually an extremely successful open source project if you think about it. It's one of the only open source projects probably ever to create a $1 trillion in value, and still having this like open source aspect that we also see from BitTorrent, where like nobody owns it, nobody controls it, nobody can stop it, because it's like it's crowd controlled in a unstoppable, ungameable way. And it's adding solving a real problem of like financial freedom, which is like again, I live in a privileged place that's a small country that's pretty stable, but I interact with a lot of people where and also just like where sending money and stuff like that, it's just really, really complicated, or where inflation eats up all your money, or governments will apply capital controls to seize your money all of a sudden. So that kind of ethos of financial freedom is super important, also for Keet, and like that's also a thing why there's a huge overlap there between what's happening there, and also like I'm a technologist, and the technology interplays there are very interesting. Like peer-to-peer has this really good aspect of like everything is local. Like you and I are just talking to each other. Blockchains and Bitcoin has this sense of like financial stuff is global. Like we sync everything globally. And the interplay between those two things is very, very interesting, where we can like, we can do fast, cheap communication with each other directly. But if we're doing big monetary transfers, we can also do that in a slower way through like something like Bitcoin, but in a way that's like 100% decentralized, and like, we don't have to rely on any, again, like weird jurisdiction or something like that. I think that's like, the overlap between these two things is just everything you need to build any kind of massively functioning system. Like, but you need both, basically, is what I'm saying, at the same time. So it's very symbiotic.
One of the things I've noticed is that there's a massive push over the last decade for censorship online. And do you think that Keet could kind of like open the floodgates to disrupt this control of the narrative that these centralized platforms have?
Yeah, I think so, because and that's one of the things I like to talk about a lot, is like this idea of like the one true network doesn't really work because of that. Like, there'll always be somebody that will argue that something shouldn't be said, or something has to be said. And like censorship, there's always two sides to censorship. There's some people that says it's because it's bad, and some parties like just disagreement. What the world really needs is just thousands and millions or billions of networks, kind of like we're doing right now. We're just talking to each other and recording a podcast, but still. But in a way where all of that stuff is interoperable, like, where we can have social networks between each other, but we can integrate them because they're speaking the same protocol to bigger social networks where there might be moderation because somebody's running that, or you can always make a new social network that has none of it, because like it's not about all the data being in one place. The data is with you, and you can move around really easily. And I think that's what peer-to-peer really, really solves, because it's basically saying there cannot be any censorship because there's not one big network, so you can just always make more networks. You just like cut off the censors, basically. So because you own the data, and that's like the big thing here to think about. Like you don't realize how much data these places have, like Twitter and stuff like that. And that's why they can actually apply these kind of rules upon you that most of the cases don't make any sense to you.
Another project that Bitfinex has put their support behind is John Carvalho's Synonym. Is there any overlap between Synonym and Keet?
So we work closely with Synonym. They're running tons of stuff on our peer-to-peer stack called Hypercore, and that's part of the big documentation push we're doing right now. Will be more out. So we interface pretty heavily with them, because we're in the business of making peer-to-peer technology and making peer-to-peer protocols. But where that stuff, like I just said, gets really exciting, and it's in this like overlap where things are compatible with each other. So like you want to be able to use the Synonym app and log in with a decentralized ID there, like something that's basically a key pair. But you want to be able to then use that data also to log into Keet, so you can have this one identity that you move around, that you control. You can have as many as them as you want, but like that they're compatible in this ecosystem. I think that's what's super exciting about Synonym, and also a lot of the overlap we're doing with peer-to-peer, and also this idea that you can more easily split off problems and have one team solve one thing and another team solve one thing but because it's the same underlying peer-to-peer network, the solutions work both ways, which is very close to the open source ethos in a way. So that's probably like some good overlap there.
That's super inspiring. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about Keet that you think is important to mention?
Well, it's like one thing that's always important to mention is that it's available now. You can get it on Keet.io, and we have desktop apps right now for Windows, Linux, and Mac. Like you're saying, it's an alpha. That means that it's actually pretty stable, but once in a while there is the occasional fallout that we're fixing because we're moving fast, and that's what we're all about. I would encourage anybody who hasn't already to download and try it out, give us feedback. And we have a very active, for now, Discord until it moves into Keet. And I would love for anybody who's listening also to join that with any feature requests or ideas for how we can improve this. That's super exciting for me. I hope that the next podcast we record can be directly on Keet and distributed on Keet. That would be super exciting.
Yeah, that would be super exciting. Okay, so you mentioned the Discord. Is there any other social media that they can follow you on? Do you have a Twitter? Do you have a Reddit?
Yeah, so we have a Twitter account also, Keet.io, where we post all the news and all the memes. It's important to have good memes, and that's our primary sources of centralized communication right now. So very exciting, and we'll soon have a public GitHub also, where our code is at, and like I said, tons of documentation and things like that.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be my next question, is for the developers, how can they get involved and start playing with the code?
So for the developers, I would encourage them to join the Discord, because that's where the Holepunch developers are, and that's like also good to get developer feedback. And I'm also on Twitter. My account is Mafintosh, Mafintosh, and I'm happy to talk anything peer-to-peer or help people, guide them in the way of the peer-to-peer at any time. So feel free to reach out.
Okay, my last question is, aside from Keet, does Holepunch have any other peer-to-peer apps in the works?
So we're primarily focused on, so the answer is yes, and we have tons of things we're coming out with soon, also including peer-to-peer, like I said, for developers, peer-to-peer modules, and tons of tooling around that. And we're always looking for the next thing. Actually, what we're really excited about is actually not us building apps, or other people building apps, but we have more apps that are coming during the next year. So we're all working on that, and also, like, I should mention that the platform is also the same thing the mobile app is running on is also the P2P platform. So it's also very easy for developers to make these apps cross-platform, cross-device.
Okay,
so, super cool.
Cool, super exciting. Mathias, thank you so much for joining me for the podcast today and answering all my questions.
Thank you too. I appreciate it. It was, like I said, it's always fun to talk peer-to-peer, and I wish we could just keep talking all the time.
Yeah, me too. I wish we had more time to continue the discussion, but we can have you back. So
cool, man.